Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that, well, really dictates the quality of our daily interactions: emotional intelligence, or EQ. Think of it as this kind of hidden force shaping how we connect, how we communicate, and build lasting bonds, everywhere. Work, family, friendships.
Absolutely, it's key.
It really is. It's the key to understanding others and maybe just as importantly, understanding ourselves in relation to them.
Exactly. And at its heart, EQ is about being, let's say, smart with emotions, both our own and those happening around us.
Smart with emotions, I like that.
Yeah, it's our ability to recognize what we're feeling, understand why, and then, crucially, manage those feelings effectively. And of course, tuning into others' emotions and responding with some insight.
And the really hopeful part, I think, is that unlike, say, IQ, which feels pretty fixed,
Right.
EQ isn't like that. It's a skill, something dynamic we can actually cultivate and get better at.
That's the powerful thing. It can be learned and strengthened.
Absolutely. So our aim today isn't just to define EQ. We want to really dig into how it impacts, the whole fabric of our relationships. And more importantly, maybe give you some practical ways to boost your own emotional intelligence, forge those deeper, more meaningful connections. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
This idea, emotional intelligence. It feels like it's been around, but it really exploded into the mainstream at some point, right?
It did. Well, psychologists explored related ideas for a while. The 1990s were really the turning point. That's largely thanks to the work of psychologist Daniel Goleman.
Ah, Goleman, yes.
He really synthesized a lot of the research and highlighted how practically important EQ is. In his work, he identified 5 key areas, sort of the pillars of emotional intelligence.
5 key areas. Interesting. So what are these core components that build up our EQ?
Okay, so the first one is self-awareness. Now, this isn't just, knowing you're happy or sad in a general sense.
Way, it's more specific.
Much more specific. It's more nuanced ability to recognize and really understand your specific emotions right as they're happening. It's about being deeply tuned in to your feelings.
Okay.
And understanding how those feelings then go on to influence your thoughts and ultimately what you do.
Yeah.
Think of it like having a finely tuned internal radar for your emotional states.
So it's not just I feel bad, but pinpointing, okay, this is disappointment, or that's frustration kicking in. How does that level of detail help in relationships?
Well, imagine you're in a discussion, maybe getting some feedback that stings a bit.
We've all been there.
Right. If you've got strong self-awareness, you might notice a very specific feeling, maybe that flash of defensiveness or a tightness like anxiety in your stomach. Recognizing that particular response and maybe even connecting it to past experiences gives you this crucial pause. You get a moment to choose how to respond instead of just being automatically driven by that first gut feeling.
So it gives you information to navigate with rather than just reacting.
Exactly. Navigate more deliberately. You understand your internal landscape so you can handle the external one better.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so self-awareness is piece number 1. What's the second piece of the puzzle?
The second is self-regulation. You can think of this as having a sort of pause button for your emotions.
A pause button, okay.
It's the ability to manage, maybe control, your emotions and impulses, especially when things get difficult or stressful. It's about staying calm, thinking clearly, even when you're feeling things intensely, rather than just being, swept away.
So back to that feedback scenario, self-regulation would be that moment where you actually take the breath or mentally step back before blurting out something defensive.
Precisely. It's that internal governor, if you like. It allows for a more thoughtful, more constructive response. It stops you from saying or doing something in the heat of the moment that you might kick yourself for later.
It's about choosing your reaction, not just letting it happen to you.
You got it. Choosing your reaction.
Okay, so we have self-awareness, understanding our emotions in detail, and self-regulation, managing those states. What comes next?
The third component is motivation. Now, this isn't the kind of motivation that comes from, say, external rewards like praise or a bonus.
Okay, not extrinsic.
No, this is about being driven by internal factors, things like your own desire for personal growth, your core values, that inherent drive to achieve something meaningful just for its own sake. Intrinsic motivation.
So even if there's no immediate payoff or applause, that internal compass keeps you going. How does that fuel our connections with others?
Well, think about a time a friend was going through something really tough.
Right.
There might not be any tangible reward for you in spending hours listening, offering support. It can be draining.
That's all right.
But if you're driven by internal values, like loyalty or compassion, that motivation will push you to be there for them, even when it's hard. It's that deeper why behind your actions and relationships.
Got it. So it's the difference between helping because you feel you should versus helping because it genuinely aligns with who you are. Okay, what's number 4?
Number 4 is empathy. This is a really big one. It's the ability to understand and even share the feelings of others.
Right.
But it's more than just recognizing someone else is sad. It's about truly putting yourself in their shoes, grasping their perspective, their emotional reality. This is absolutely fundamental for building deeper connections and offering support that actually resonates.
Empathy feels like the real bridge builder between people. Can you give us maybe a more nuanced example? Because it sounds like there are layers to it.
There really are. Imagine a colleague seems unusually quiet, maybe withdrawn. Someone with cognitive empathy might just think, they seem down. Bad morning, maybe.
Right, just noticing.
Right. Someone with emotional empathy might actually feel a touch of their sadness or worry. But then there's compassionate empathy. That's where you go a step further and think, what might actually help them right now?
So it leads to action.
Potentially, yes. Maybe offering a listening ear or perhaps easing up on a deadline for a shared project is possible. It's about understanding, feeling with them, and then being moved to respond thoughtfully.
That distinction is really insightful. It's not just feeling, but understanding why and considering how to help. Okay, and the 5th key component.
The 5th is social skills. This really covers your ability to manage relationships effectively, build rapport. It's kind of the practical application of all the other EQ elements in your interactions.
So how you use the other 4 in the real world.
Exactly. This includes things like effective communication, both expressing yourself clearly and listening actively, being able to navigate conflict constructively, working well with others. It's how you weave it all together day to day.
So in that disagreement with a partner example, strong social skills wouldn't just be managing your own anger,
Right.
but also communicating your needs in a way they can actually hear and then working together towards a solution.
Precisely. It's about collaboration, finding win-win outcomes if possible, and keeping the relationship healthy while you do it. And it's so important to remember, these 5 things aren't isolated.
They work together.
Absolutely. They're interconnected, constantly influencing each other, helping us navigate our emotions and our interactions much more skillfully.
Okay, that gives us a much clearer picture of what EQ actually is, those 5 interconnected parts. Now, let's really dive into how this emotional intelligence shapes our everyday relationships. This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
This is definitely where it gets truly fascinating. Because a strong EQ, it really acts like this invisible current, influencing almost every single aspect of how we connect with people. Let's start with communication.
Makes sense. Good communication is the heart of any good relationship, surely. How does EQ boost that?
Well, when you're emotionally intelligent, you develop this heightened awareness of how your words, even just your tone, land on other people. It's like your social antenna gets more sensitive. You're not just focused on getting your own point across. You're also keenly tuned in to how your message is being received emotionally. And this naturally makes you a much better listener, more active, more empathetic.
So it's about hearing the emotional subtext, not just the literal word.
Precisely. You get better at picking up on all the cues.
Yeah.
The verbal ones, yes, the words, the pauses, the way someone says something, but also the nonverbal stuff, body language, facial expressions, even those subtle shifts in energy. All of that gives you a much richer understanding of what someone's really communicating, often way beyond what they're explicitly saying.
Can you maybe paint a picture of that, how it looks in a real conversation?
Sure. Imagine a friend is sharing maybe disappointment about work. If you're really practicing empathetic, active listening, you're not just waiting for your turn to jump in with advice. You're making eye contact, maybe nodding, showing you're engaged. You might reflect back some of what they said. So it sounds like you felt really overlooked, just to check your understanding. You might also notice their shoulders are a bit slumped, or their voice sounds hesitant. By acknowledging those cues, responding with genuine concern, wow, that sounds tough, you create this safe space for them to really open up without feeling rushed or judged.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference in how connected someone feels. Okay, what about when things get tense? When disagreements pop up, how does EQ help us navigate conflict?
This is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence equips us to handle conflict in, well, far healthier and more productive ways.
How so?
Because you're better at understanding and managing your own emotions. staying calmer, stopping anger from just hijacking the whole conversation, you can actually address the real issues with more clarity, less emotional noise.
So instead of immediately going on the attack or just shutting down completely.
Exactly. Someone with higher EQ might recognize their own frustration starting to bubble up and intentionally pause. They might even say, okay, I feel myself getting heated. Can we take a minute?
Actually verbalizing it.
Sometimes, yes. The key is shifting focus from, like, winning the argument to genuinely trying to understand the other person's perspective, even if you totally disagree with it, and then looking for a resolution that respects both people's needs. It's about de-escalating, not pouring fuel on the fire.
It sounds like it transforms conflict from this, like, battleground into something more like collaborative problem solving.
Ideally, yes. Or at least less destructive conflict. And this ties directly into the power of empathy in keeping relationships strong. We mentioned it as a core component, but how does that ability to understand and share feelings specifically bolster our bonds?
Well, it seems like empathy is just the foundation. Feeling truly seen and understood, that's huge in any relationship.
Absolutely huge. When you genuinely understand and acknowledge someone else's emotional experience, it fosters this incredibly deep sense of connection and trust.
Yeah.
It basically tells them, you're not alone in this feeling. I get it. And that allows you to respond in a way that feels truly validating and supportive, which in turn really strengthens the emotional bond between you. It creates what psychologists call psychological safety.
Can you give us another quick example? How demonstrating empathy can really shore up a relationship?
Okay, imagine a friend tells you they're feeling really insecure about a big life decision they just made.
Okay.
A response that lacks empathy might be to immediately jump in with advice, oh, you should do this, or dismiss their fears, don't worry, you'll be fine.
Right, brushing it off.
Yeah. An empathetic response, though, would be to acknowledge their vulnerability. Maybe saying something like, wow, that sounds like a really big step, and it makes total sense that you'd be feeling uncertain right now. Just that simple validation can make them feel heard, supported, and strengthens that trust.
It's about validating their emotional reality, even if you wouldn't feel the same way yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if you don't agree with their choice. And all these things we've talked about, better communication, healthier conflict resolution, that strong base of empathy, they all contribute to something absolutely fundamental: trust and a real sense of connection.
So how does EQ specifically help build that crucial trust?
Well, when you consistently show up with emotional intelligence in your interactions, you communicate honestly, openly, you're reliable, considerate of others' feelings, you handle disagreements respectfully, you build up this track record, people learn over time that they can count on you to be mindful of their feelings and to navigate challenges with integrity. That consistency is what lays the foundation for deep, lasting trust.
So it's not about grand one-off gestures, but more the accumulation of those smaller, consistent, emotionally intelligent actions every day.
That's exactly it. Being tuned into yourself and others and responding thoughtfully, consistently.
Yeah.
That shows you value the relationship. You value the other person. That's the bedrock of trust and strong connection.
Okay, this really underscores just how vital EQ is. But for those of us listening and thinking, okay, this is great info, but how do I actually get better at this? Is emotional intelligence something we can actively cultivate?
Absolutely. And that's the really empowering part. It is not a fixed trait. With conscious effort, with practice, you can definitely develop and strengthen your emotional intelligence all through your life.
That is fantastic news. So where do we start? What are some, concrete strategies we can use?
Well, the journey really begins with intentionally practicing self-awareness, which, as we said, is about really tuning into your emotions as they actually happen in your daily life.
So making a real effort to check in with ourselves regularly, what does that look like practically?
It could be just taking brief pauses throughout your day. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What specific thing, maybe an interaction or event, triggered this? And how is this emotion affecting my thoughts, my behavior? And keeping a journal can be surprisingly powerful here. Regularly writing down your feelings, the situations around them, your reactions, it helps you spot patterns, understand your triggers much more deeply.
Journaling to sort of map our emotional landscape. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next practical step?
So once you start getting a clearer picture of your emotions, the next step is actively working on managing them more effectively. This is where self-regulation really comes in.
Right, the pause button.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's learning not to let your emotions just dictate your reactions, especially in those moments when stress or strong feelings feel like they might overwhelm you.
Which is easier said than done sometimes, right? When you're feeling really worked up, taking that step back is tough. Any specific techniques for the moment?
Oh, definitely. One really powerful thing is just creating a little bit of space between the trigger and your response. This could be as simple as taking a few slow, deep breaths, or trying mindfulness for just a minute. Just observe the emotion without judging it, or even physically stepping away from the situation for a moment to collect yourself. These small pauses disrupt that automatic reaction.
Gives you a chance to choose.
Exactly. A chance to choose a more thoughtful response.
Those are really practical things you can do right away. What about cultivating empathy, that ability to understand and share others' feelings? How do we work on strengthening our empathy muscles?
Developing empathy really involves making a conscious effort to try and see the world from the other person's viewpoint. Before you jump to conclusions or figure out what you're going to say, try to really consider their perspective. What might their background be? What experiences could be shaping how they feel right now? Actively try to understand their underlying needs or concerns.
So actively shifting focus from my internal world to trying to grasp theirs.
Exactly. And there are tangible things you can do. Practice active listening, like we talked about. Really focus your attention.
Yeah.
Ask open-ended questions, not yes-no questions, but ones that encourage them to elaborate, share more.
Like, how did that make you feel? Instead of, were you upset?
Precisely. And crucially, validate their emotions. Even if you don't agree or you'd react differently, acknowledging their feelings. Saying something simple like, I can see how that would be incredibly frustrating for you. That's immensely powerful. It makes people feel heard.
That validation piece seems so simple, but yeah, it can have such a profound impact.
It really is a cornerstone of empathetic connection. And then that leads us to improving our social skills, the tools we use in the interaction itself. What are some ways to sharpen those?
This feels like the how-to of the interaction dance.
Pretty much. One fundamental thing is just being fully present and attentive when you're talking with someone. Minimize distractions, put the phone away, quiet the mental to-do list, and really focus on the person. Be there. And active listening, again, is paramount. Make sure you're genuinely trying to hear and understand, not just waiting for your gap to speak.
Are there specific communication techniques that help here?
Yes, definitely. One really useful technique for clearer, less confrontational communication is using I statements.
The I feel statements.
Exactly. When you express your feelings or needs, starting with I, you take ownership of your experience without putting blame on the other person. So instead of, you always interrupt me, which immediately puts someone on the defensive,
Right.
try, I feel unheard when I'm interrupted. It shifts the focus to your experience, makes it easier for them to hear you without getting defensive.
That sounds much more constructive. Okay, and what's the final piece you mentioned for actively cultivating EQ?
The last key strategy is to actively seek feedback. Ask people you trust, friends, family, maybe colleagues, for their honest perspective.
Ooh, that takes courage.
It does, but it's so valuable. Because sometimes we have blind spots, right? We don't always see how we come across or how effectively we're handling things emotionally. Asking for feedback gives you insights into areas where you might have room to grow.
That makes sense. What kind of questions could you ask to get helpful feedback?
You could ask things like, do you feel like I listen well when we talk? Or when we disagree, how does my approach feel to you? Or maybe, is there anything I could do to be more supportive in our interactions? The key is being genuinely open to hearing their perspective without getting defensive. Treat it as a gift.
A gift for growth. Okay, so we've looked at what EQ is, why it matters, and how to cultivate it. Now let's bring it all together. How does this actually play out in different parts of our lives?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how these principles show up across different contexts. Let's start with, say, the workplace.
Okay, professional life.
Yeah.
How does EQ help us navigate those often tricky dynamics?
Well, in a professional setting, EQ is absolutely crucial. Think about navigating difficult conversations with colleagues, with your boss, with clients, managing workplace stress effectively, fostering a positive team environment. It's also very strongly linked to effective leadership. Leaders with high EQ tend to be much better at understanding and motivating their teams, communicating clearly, resolving conflicts in a way that actually strengthens relationships instead of damaging them.
So it's not just about technical skills. That ability to connect with and understand people is a huge asset professionally. What about closer to home? Family relationships?
Well, within families, EQ is really the bedrock of understanding, compassion, and just resilience. When family members can express their own emotions healthfully and listen to each other with empathy.
Even with kids.
Especially with kids.
Yeah.
Recognizing and validating their emotional worlds is so important. When that happens, it deepens bonds, reduces misunderstandings, cuts down on conflict. It just creates a more emotionally safe, harmonious home.
Creating a space where everyone feels their emotions matter. Okay, what about friendships? Those vital connections outside family and work.
In friendships, EQ is what allows for those truly meaningful, supportive connections, both in good times and bad.
Right.
It's about being present, really listening when a friend shares something important, offering support without judgment, knowing how to navigate disagreements in a way that strengthens the friendship, doesn't break it. It's about being that reliable, empathetic presence they can count on.
Being the kind of friend who celebrates your wins but also sits with you in the tough stuff. And finally, our most intimate connections, romantic relationships.
Yeah, in romantic relationships, EQ is arguably the cornerstone of long-term happiness and stability. It involves being able to express your own needs calmly and clearly, being really attuned to your partner's emotional cues, both the spoken and the unspoken ones, and having the capacity for sincere apologies and forgiveness when conflicts inevitably pop up. It's about creating this secure, emotionally attuned partnership where both people feel truly seen, understood, and valued.
Wow. It really does sound like EQ is the essential foundation for healthy, thriving relationships across every single area of our lives.
It absolutely is. It's not just some nice-to-have soft skill. It feels pretty fundamental to how we connect and build fulfilling lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's just crystal clear that emotional intelligence is this incredibly powerful tool. It's not about, being overly emotional or suppressing feelings, but about being genuinely intelligent and skillful with them, our own and others.
Exactly. It's recognizing that emotions are valuable data, information that helps us navigate the world better and build those deeper, more meaningful connections that, frankly, most of us crave.
And the really encouraging takeaway, again, is that this is a skill, something we can all actively develop. By focusing on self-awareness, intentionally practicing empathy, working on communication, we can build stronger, more resilient, more fulfilling relationships.
And it's so important to remember, it's a journey, right? Not a destination. Developing EQ is ongoing. Every single interaction is a chance to learn more about yourself, about others, and to hone these skills. It's about striving to be a bit more honest, a bit more compassionate, a bit more aware.
That's a really valuable perspective. Keep practicing. So for you, listening, maybe consider this. How could consciously applying just one aspect of EQ, maybe making that extra effort with active listening next time, or really trying to see things from someone else's view before reacting, how could that shift the dynamic in one of your key relationships? What small, intentional change could lead to a really significant positive impact? Definitely something worth reflecting on. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.